I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods, yeah. One in particular, I'm just a messenger, let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box. And you cannot compare them at all, so don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Yeah. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table. Woo. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
What is going on, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Thursday, so Matt and myself are back at it once again. We are going to finish talking NFC West today. We've got the Arizona Cardinals and the San Francisco 49ers on the docket, plus a little bit of Loki talk finally. Wasn't able to see episode 3, but we will definitely talk about episodes 1 and 2. Before we get into that, Matt, how are you doing on this beautiful Thursday?
Doing pretty good. It's getting to be the end of the week. Normally, Dennis and I have mentioned before, Thursday is our Friday, but in this case, it's summer camps, so I will get to work tomorrow morning as well, which was tough. I woke up this morning, I'm like, it's my Friday. It's not.
Yeah. I feel you every Thursday, so I promise. It's at least one more day after today, and it's one of those things where I always forget how kind of like grueling it is that first week you come back after not working for a week. And, at least I don't know about your job. Mine, there's, if mistakes are made, it makes your job 10 times more difficult when you come back. But, it's been a fun week. I've somewhat been excited to get back to work a little bit, but it's been fun. I'm ready for the weekend, though. It cannot get here fast enough. So let's not waste any more time. Let's jump in and talk about the Arizona Cardinals, who finished 8-8 and in third place in 2020. Their key additions: James Conner, running back from Pittsburgh; AJ Green, wide receiver from Cincinnati. They got JJ Watt, the defensive end from the Houston Texans; Malcolm Butler, cornerback from the New England Patriots; and Matt Prater, the kicker last.
Butler
that's right. He was with the Titans last. That's right.
He was with the Patriots. I mean, he took the long way.
That was probably his better time, I would say, I guess, was when he was with the Patriots. And Matt Prater, who was the kicker for the Detroit Lions. Their losses: Kenyon Drake, running back, goes to the Raiders; Patrick Peterson, cornerback, goes to the Vikings; Hassan Reddick, linebacker, to the Panthers; and Dan Arnold, tight end, to the Panthers. In the first round, they took a linebacker that I was hoping the Browns might end up taking in Zaven Collins out of Tulsa. They add the explosive wide receiver Rondale Moore out of Purdue, wide receiver in the second round, and cornerback Marco Wilson in the fourth. The Cardinals were the last team out of the playoff race in 2020. Started off really hot in that season last year. Can they get into the playoffs in 2021?
And I think that's the big challenge, because we talked about the teams that finished above them on Monday. The Rams got Stafford, still a very strong core of a team. The Seahawks still have some great players and seem to always be competitive and always hang around, even during seasons when you think they should be down. That's been the case with Pete Carroll. Then you have the Cardinals, and we can't forget about the 49ers, the team we're about to talk about in a little bit, who were the NFC champions in 2019. So this is, in my opinion, probably the most loaded division top to bottom in the NFL. I know the AFC North probably has 3 playoff teams. Depending on how the Bengals do, they could make a run at this. But the NFC West has 4 teams you legitimately could make an argument for being in the playoffs. And a lot of it's going to come down to Kyler Murray and how they can execute. I think Cliff Kingsbury has done better than some of us thought he might do with this system. I thought they were good at times last year. They just couldn't hold it together. A big question is going to be about defense. They got some guys that have some heart and some experience. J.J. Watt, definitely the tail end of his career. It's not what he once was, but he's a guy that brings a lot of veteran experience and heart and leadership. Malcolm Butler, we've seen him do some impressive things. I mean, he made some incredible plays in that Super Bowl for the Patriots. Can that be enough with some of the other veterans they've surrounded in there and the talent that they've acquired to win the wins that they need? You know, if they're going to have to, I think in the NFC, you're going to have to get to 10 or 11 wins to make it into the playoffs. They were right on the cusp and right out last year. I'd like to see them take a step forward, and I think they can do it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I was much higher on them last year than you guys were. I actually think I had them in the playoffs. If I remember correctly, I think I had like almost all 4 teams of the NFC West in the playoffs, if not having all 4. I think I did. And obviously they were really on pace for that. I mentioned right in the beginning of that question that they started off on that hot start. I was all excited. I thought they were going to make it in. I've been much higher on Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray since they came into the NFL together. And I do think Kyler Murray's injury probably played a little bit of part into them kind of falling into the second half. Their defense needs to get a little bit better. They've added a couple pieces there that might help. Obviously, the offense added an A.J. Green. James Conner comes over to help Chase Edmonds there in the running game. They add another weapon in Rondale Moore. So this offense looks like it's going to be very explosive. I trust Murray's just he's gotten a little bit better every year. So even if he stays right at where he's at, I think he's got the ability to take them into the playoffs. It's just going to be, in my opinion, more, can that defense do enough to help them? Because the offense is scoring points. That defense needs to take that step that the offense has taken the past couple of years. If that defense can do it, then I agree with you. I think they can get there, and I hope they do. They're a fun team. I'd love to see him get in there just because I think Kyler Murray is going to be fun to watch on the big stage. He was really fun to do it when he made it the 1 year in the college football playoff. I'd love to see him do it in the NFL. So fantasy finishes and fantasy projections here for the Cardinals. Kyler Murray was QB2 in 2020. Where does he finish in 2021? Is he a lock for top 5, top 3? Is he an MVP candidate? Dennis says he has Murray at QB5 in his early rankings. He did, as I just mentioned, finishes QB2, 3,971 pass yards, 26 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 819 rushing yards with 11 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think he was in the MVP candidate discussion last year. It was especially with that first half. You know, you think about that game against Buffalo, where they kind of were dueling with Josh Allen and were able to come out with the Hail Murray there. I think that was kind of the zenith of where he was. Both those guys were in the conversation at that time. He sort of faded down as his team wasn't able to close out and win games. And that's really the difference in the MVP. So can he be part of the MVP discussion? I think he can be. He needs to be able to guide that team to winning some games. In terms of fantasy, I think we've seen, he to me feels like a mortal lock for top 5. I currently have him at QB3 in my first pass of doing 2021 rankings. With his rushing ability, he has better weapons, I think, this season. Fitzgerald hasn't re-signed, probably maybe done. We don't know about Christian Kirk, but they got A.J. Green, who's a veteran who saw over 100 targets last year. He's not done. They got Rondale Moore in there. You still have Chase Edmonds, a good pass catching back, and DeAndre Hopkins. So I think he's going to get it done.
Yeah, he's right at QB3 for me as well, and I could see him jumping Josh Allen, and obviously Patrick Mahomes is kind of sitting there at 1, and he's going to stay there. I don't see him moving at all unless he gets injured throughout the process of the next couple months. The only other quarterback I see maybe jumping him is Lamar. I've been mentioning that I think Lamar is going to take that step forward this year. I'm back on the Lamar train, so I could see Lamar finishing up there in the top 3, which would knock Murray down to probably 4, but he's definitely top 5 for sure. I don't see outside. Even last year, with the shoulder injury, he still finishes a top 2 running back. And I agree with you. The rushing upside that he brings is just ridiculous. He seems to score multiple rushing touchdowns every single year. He's so hard to tackle because he's so quick and elusive when he gets into the open field with the ball. So I'm all in on Murray being top 5.
I can already see when we get to the quarterback ranking show, we're going to have a lot of fun because you and I both have him at 3. We have 2 different quarterbacks above him.
Oh, wait, you don't have Josh Allen? No? Interesting. Okay.
I agreed with that Josh Allen might slide back a little bit. I still have Josh Allen top 5, but he's not the one of the 2 I have above him.
Gotcha. Well, I haven't solidified mine, but I'm pretty sure it's Allen I have above him. I'm pretty sure mine right now is Mahomes, Allen, Murray, Lamar, but that might change. I haven't finished all of my stuff yet. But, yeah, I mean, I think if you don't want to say top 3, he's a lot top 5. I don't see any way he falls out of that. MVP, I do think he will be a candidate, especially if he gets the Cardinals into the Super Bowl. Or not Super Bowl, I'm sorry, the playoffs. If they don't get into the playoffs, I just don't see it because we don't see enough. We don't really see guys getting the MVP award, even getting consideration if they're not making the playoffs. So I don't think he has to have that magical year like Josh Allen had last year. I think if he just does something close to what he's been doing and, again, takes the Cardinals to the playoffs, he'll be in consideration for it. Will he win it? That's a different question. You'll have to tune into closer into the season when we actually give our predictions on who was. I think I actually picked him to win it last year. So,
for a first half of the season, that looked like a pretty genius dark horse pick. It's just unfortunate the way they finished the season.
Yep, I think the only one I got right last year was Kevin Stefanski, Coach of the Year.
Hey, at least you picked Matt Patricia as Coach of the Year.
Well, you were all in on the Lions, though, and, it didn't work out. But, hey, we all make those things. I'm sure I was all in on somebody last year, and it didn't work out. I mean,
I careened off the cliff like a milk truck with no brakes.
Hey, it's better that way than, like, just being right there, right? Like, just go all in or go down with the ship. At least you never bailed off it. I'll give you credit on that because I'd have pretended like it never happened. You were all year like, nope, let's just keep going, Detroit.
I thought the Lions had a good team on paper.
Oh, so did I. I don't think I had them that bad. I know I didn't have them as high as you and Dennis did, but I was right there with you. I was like, yeah, let's go. And now, nope, didn't work. Running back, very interesting here with James Conner, who comes over from Pittsburgh, and the team has Edmonds. Who finishes as the better RB is either top 24. So Dennis says, my sense is that Conner is a better goal line option than Drake. 10 touchdowns was, but I'm not sure Murray, 11 touchdowns, will give Conner the opportunity. I think they're both right on the line. I'm going to say they both just miss. Chase Edmonds finishes RB25 last year, 97 carries, 448 yards and 1 touchdown, 53 receptions for 402 yards and 4 touchdowns. James Conner with the Steelers finishes RB27, 169 carries, 721 yards, 6 touchdowns, 35 receptions for 215 yards.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I am right there with Dennis. I think they both end up close, and they both end up just outside of top 24. I actually have right now, I have Conner higher at 26 and Edmonds at 28. I think Conner's going to be the runner, and we'll probably get some rushing touchdowns, and Edmonds is still going to be more of the kind of passing. But I think they're going to split so much, and they have a similar problem to what you get with the Buffalo running backs. The best running back on the team is the quarterback. I mean, Kyler Murray went for over 800 yards and 11 touchdowns. Even if he comes back a shade on the yardage, I still think he's a dynamic touchdown weapon, and they could end up passing for more touchdowns than they did last year because they've worked on their receiving core a little bit. So I think both of them will have decent seasons. I think both of them will be flex-worthy plays. I don't think either makes 24.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to think if Edmonds can do anything here. I mean, he was good last year. Conner has been good when he's been able to stay on the field. He's been injured so much. I don't know what to think with Conner. The one thing I'll say with Murray, and maybe I'm wrong, I didn't have a chance to look at it. I don't feel like he had a lot of touchdowns in the red zone, though, his rushing. I mean, I know he has some of them, but he had a lot of really long runs, too. I don't know if they're going to rely on Murray. I would hope at least that the reason they brought James Conner over is to stop running Murray so much, because I feel like that's where he ended up getting hurt. I remember they talked about it when it happened. He took a pretty big hit, and I'm pretty sure that's what led to his shoulder injury. So my hope is they're going to stop running him so much. That's why you bring over James Conner. You have Chase Edmonds. You have, dang it, what's his name? Came out of Arizona State. Benjamin, who can help out as well as the third guy in that rotation.
I feel like they have somebody else, too, that we're forgetting.
They probably do. Those are the only three I think matter at the moment, unless two of them get injured. So I'm hoping – go ahead.
Benjamin, that's one that had to have been a little bit crushing for people, because I know I stashed him like a lot of people and thought, when they let Drake walk, maybe you'd have a chance. But it seems like bringing in Connor, unless he gets injured. They also have a guy – Kalfani Muhammad, who I liked as a practice squad guy for the Broncos. That'll be interesting to see if he can make the team and do anything.
So I think one of them's going to do it. And if I had to lean one way, I actually think I'm going to go Edmonds, just because I think he's a little bit of a better pass catcher, coming in at 24. I mean, he finished 25 last year. I do think he's going to get more work now. I was at him who's been saying, I think that he, I know they've come out and said that he's the one, and he's kind of talked it up too. I don't know if it's like
it just
70-30 or even
it holds me back a little bit. The rushing, we have just never seen him. 97 carries was by far his career high. So was 448 yards rushing. You could say it's because they've had other people. Last year, I know we discussed this many weeks, it seemed frustrating watching Kenyon Drake at times. It seemed like he wasn't doing anything. And then you look at the end of the year, he had almost 1,000 yards rushing and 10 touchdowns. I mean, I could see Edmonds possibly. I just don't believe that he can carry a big rushing load.
I mean,
and if they have,
so
how much does Rondale Moore impact the kind of pass receiving Chase Edmonds was doing?
I don't think it'll be much, but I do think having Rondale Moore is going to hurt him some, because I wouldn't be surprised if they use him in the running game some. I do think he's going to be used as a returner as well. He's phenomenal anytime he touches the ball. I think that's going to help them, though, too, is now you have a Rondale Moore in the slot, where nothing against Christian Kirk. I think, at least I've said it, I always thought Christian Kirk was going to be their slot guy once Larry Fitzgerald retired, which when they drafted him, we thought it's probably in a year or two. And then Fitzgerald just kind of hung on, because I don't think Kirk's an outside receiver. Well, now I think Rondale Moore is an even better slot receiver than Christian Kirk is, and he's more explosive. He can do more. I wouldn't be surprised if they use him in the short area, run game, everything. So that is definitely going to hurt Edmonds. But I also think he's just more explosive than James Conner, and I think they definitely want a guy like Conner who can be that battering ram, use him down at the goal line or when they need those tough yards. But the way that they like to get their running backs out in space, use them in the receiving game, and with everything they do in that offense, I just feel like Edmonds fits better. So I do somewhat believe Kingsbury when he says that he's going to be our one. Now, again, when I say that, I do think it's going to be close to like a 60-40, maybe even 50-50 split. I don't think Edmonds is going to get 90 to 80 to even 70% of the carries. So he may not get 180 or 200 carries, but if he's getting catches and with as explosive as he can be, and he's getting touchdowns, I think he can slide in, because, I mean, I know he's not your favorite. I've talked about it all the time. Melvin Gordon, in my opinion, is not a very good running back in general, but volume had always allowed him to finish as an RB1. If Chase Edmonds is getting better volume than he got last year and he finishes RB25, I think he can move up a couple spots. So I don't think he's going to be like RB15, but I think he can squeak into the back end of RB2. He would be my bet, because I just don't think they're going to have James Conner be in there for like multiple drives and just like,
and I need to see James Conner play more than 10 games this season before I feel any kind of confidence that he can get back up into top 24. I liked his talent at one point, but he can't stay on the field.
Yeah. And again, this is all contingent on me hoping and believing that Cliff Kingsbury's not going to run Kyler Murray a ton and try and keep him healthy. So at the wide receiver position, we just talked about that, how they added A.J. Green, Rondale Moore. Hopkins is phenomenal, one of the best wide receivers in the game. Can he be top 5? Again, Kirk, Rondale Moore, A.J. Green are there as well. Where do they finish? Dennis says it's looking like Kirk, Moore, and Green are going to split about 220 targets. I think it's pretty evenly split, and the ceiling is high-end wide receiver 4, the old better for football than fantasy moniker there. DeAndre Hopkins finishes wide receiver 4, 115 receptions, 1,407 yards, 6 touchdowns. Christian Kirk, wide receiver 51, 48 receptions, 621 yards, and 6 touchdowns. And then, of course, A.J. Green, wide receiver 68 with the Bengals, 47 receptions, 523 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, so I think Hopkins will be top 5 again. I actually currently have him right exactly at 5 in my first pass. I think what we saw last year is about what you've come to expect. He's good for 100 to 115 receptions. He's good for 12 to 1,500 yards and probably 5 to 10 touchdowns a year. I think he's their number 1. It's going to be more interesting. I tend to be with Dennis, wide receiver 4 is probably about where I'm going to put everyone. Rondale Moore is actually the one, if I had to go out of the other 3, that might finish the highest because of what you talked about, them using him creatively. If he breaks a couple of returns, that's not points you count on, but that ends up padding into you at some point in time during the season. They use him kind of as a rushing weapon in certain experiences. I think that'll bump it up. AJ Green was horribly inefficient last year. He had over 100 targets and only got 47 receptions. It was that his decline, we had seen him miss, I think it was almost 2 full seasons prior to that. It was hard to know, how healthy he was going to be. Or was it not a good fit? Was it attitude issues? It seemed toward the end of the season they almost started phasing him out of the offense. Does he kind of get new life here? We've seen him produce big in the past. I just don't trust Christian Kirk. Maybe you're right. He steps up now that Larry Fitzgerald, and does Arizona re-sign Larry Fitzgerald? He hasn't officially retired. There's still rumblings that he may end up coming back to Arizona because he likes being there, because he's a Hall of Fame guy for being there, because they're a potential playoff team. If that happens, I think that muddles it even further.
Yeah.
So I think they all potentially will have value at points. It's going to be hard to believe in them as week-to-week starters, anyone but Hopkins.
Yeah, Hopkins is the easy one. And I still remember a couple years ago when he came over to Arizona, and there was a bunch of people talking about how he wasn't even a wide receiver 1 anymore. And I love how he shut everybody up on that, because I know none of us were on that narrative. He's one of the best wide receivers in the league. I still hate that I traded him last year. I felt like I needed to, and the more and more I think about it, the more I'm like, I miss you, Hopkins. Come back to me. So he's going to be a stud with Murray. And I actually think having a guy like A.J. Green helps, because there was really nobody, nothing against Larry Fitzgerald, because I agree, walk-in Hall of Famer. But at this point in his career, he's not exactly demanding defense attention or anything like that. And there were multiple times that we saw DeAndre Hopkins was doubled, sometimes triple covered, and was still able to catch the ball and put up points. So I do think having a guy like A.J. Green, Christian Kirk, and Rondale Moore on the field as Hopkins is going to help at least a little bit. He's still probably going to get the top matchup every week, but should help him in the slightest. I do think the way I will say I'm going to go different than you guys, I think Rondale Moore has a shot to finish as a wide receiver 3. I don't think I can go wide receiver 2. I want to. I just don't think I can. The thing with Arizona is they're one of the better offenses in the league, and as we just talked about beforehand, them getting to the playoffs, if that defense doesn't step up, they're going to have to continue to put up points like they have the past couple years. I was just looking at Arizona's stats, and so last year there was 10 different times. Wait, was that 10 or 11? 12. I'm sorry, 12 different times a wide receiver rushed the ball for the Cardinals last year, including one time by DeAndre Hopkins. We just talked about it. Cliff Kingsbury comes from that air raid offense in college. They love to do stuff like that in using the wide receivers in screens, running game. That's what you've got Rondale Moore there for. Again, I would not be surprised if they don't scheme stuff specifically just for him. If in your leagues you do get points for return yards or touchdowns, and that will definitely help you, like you just said as well. But I think that they're going to use him enough in the offense if he can stay healthy, because that is the thing. He has suffered some pretty big injuries in college. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets up to a wide receiver 3. You know, with AJ Green, I'm with you. Weird year last year. He's dealt with injuries. I don't even know what AJ Green is anymore. And I feel bad saying that because I think he's pretty close to a Hall of Fame player as well. I don't know what he is, so it's kind of hard for me to count on him. And Christian Kirk, I'm just completely out on. So I expect this offense to continue to be an air raid passing offense. Well, if that's the case, DeAndre Hopkins can't do everything. And while Kyler Murray is going to put up rushing yards to help get him into that QB1 territory, can't all be that. So if we all have him up at QB3, I think someone else has got to finish higher. And so I'm going to put Rondale Moore as a high-end wide receiver 3. I don't have the balls to go with wide receiver 2s. I just don't think it happens. But I think he's got a shot because of adding the rushing and everything. And I wouldn't be surprised if he gets rushing touchdowns. They get down in the red zone. Everybody's expecting James Conner to run it in. They give a little end around to Rondale Moore coming around, or some of the little stuff where they give it to Chase Edmonds and he throws it to some, like, they're going to do all different kinds of things with this offense with Cliff Kingsbury, and adding a guy like Rondale Moore is just going to help. So I'm going to go wide receiver 3 for Rondale Moore, Green, Kirk, and if Fitzgerald comes back, I would be surprised if any of them finish wide receiver 3. I think you're probably looking at 4s all around, or 5, 6s, however you want to put it on down the list. Who do you think finishes higher out of Green and Kirk?
AJ Green.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that as well.
Yeah, because I was looking. So last year, Fitzgerald saw 72 targets. Kirk saw 79, but Fitzgerald had more receptions. I think Kirk finished higher than him, but I just feel like AJ Green's probably a little bit younger and a little more dynamic.
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree with you. I would have Green going Green going.
Yeah, not younger. I don't mean younger than Kirk, but younger than what Fitzgerald is.
Yeah. I have Green going ahead of Kirk as well. So we've talked a little bit about Dan Arnold. Last year, if you guys listen to this podcast, you know that I somewhat made fun of Dan Arnold, saying I didn't know who that was. And Dennis, I believe, was one who let me know that Matthew Berry had him, which is why he's the godfather of fantasy, because he had him ranked in his tight end list. I did not, and Dan Arnold comes on and actually had a really good year at the tight end position for the Cardinals. Dan Arnold. I'm Dan Arnold. There we go. I need to say his name slowly so that I get both in there. Dan Arnold is now gone. Is there any tight end you want from Arizona? Dennis says, I wouldn't. The surprised if the tight end group as a whole. Okay, sorry. I'm assuming he's being, I wouldn't be surprised if the tight end group as a whole get fewer than 50. Look, I'm like Ron Burgundy. If it's on the sheet, I'm going to read it. And so, sorry, it took me a minute. I was a little bit confused there. We don't really have Dan Arnold's stats on here, and that's probably.
I can read them. He got 45 targets, 31 receptions, 438 yards, and 4 TDs. Probably the leading tight end that's on the roster right now is Max Williams. You may remember, I believe it was Baltimore that he was originally drafted, Baltimore was where he was originally drafted, and people had some hopes for him. Never really panned out there. Has come to Arizona last year. He was on the roster. He only played 9 games, saw 10 targets, caught 8 of them for 102 yards and a touchdown. I've seen some people talking about how Max Williams is this huge sleeper, that there's big time value. I don't buy it. I'm not, if you're looking for a deep stash, maybe you're taking a Max Williams and, as like your third or fourth tight end in case you have to throw somebody out there. I'm just not totally buying it. I'm with Dennis. I think with the increase in the receiving group, especially if they end up bringing Fitzgerald back, and you have to remember Connor can catch passes, Edmonds can catch passes. They have at least 4 receivers, possibly 5 if Fitzgerald's there. They still have Keyshawn Johnson. They still have Andy Isabella. I don't think they need a tight end for anything more than blocking.
Yeah, I'm with you. Max Williams, I think it's time to let that dream go. I think we're going to be saying that about Chris Herndon if he doesn't do anything at this point this year, because I know we're still kind of holding on to Chris Herndon.
Saying that because old habits die hard.
You were probably right on that. So, I understand if people want to say the same thing about me saying that about Max Williams. But, yeah, I don't think with all the wide receivers and running backs, all the talent they have all over the field, I just don't think they're going to be throwing to the tight end much, if at all. Now, Matthew Berry comes out later this year and has one of the tight ends ranked very highly and says something. I'm going to listen this year because he was definitely right on Dan Arnold, but I'm going to go the other way on that one this year and think that they're likely not going to use any of them. All right, the San Francisco 49ers, a very intriguing team, really, in my opinion, took the big losses here because of the injuries they suffered all over their team last year. I think I had them winning the division in 2020. They finished in fourth place with a 6-10 record. Key additions, Alex Mack comes back to play with Kyle Shanahan, the center from the Falcons. You get Trent Williams, left tackle, who was there last year, correct? Was that last year they traded for him?
Yeah, I think they traded for him, but he signed like a massive free agent deal.
Wide receiver Mohamed Sanu, running back Wayne Gallman. Key losses: Tevin Coleman, running back, follows the Mike.
One of the
Mike. I always mix up him and his brother.
One of the LaFleurs.
Yeah, Mike, because Matt is. I always got to remember Matt's the head coach of Green Bay. Mike LaFleur and Robert Salah to the Jets. You have Jerick McKinnon, running back, goes to the Chiefs. Kendrick Bourne, wide receiver, to the Patriots. Trent Taylor, wide receiver, to the Bengals. Solomon Thomas, the defensive end, to the Raiders. And, of course, Richard Sherman, still a free agent, so there's a shot that he might come back, but as of right now, he's not with the team. Their draft picks, of course, number one, or in the first round of the third-round pick, they pass on Justin Fields for Trey Lance in the first round. They draft guard Aaron Banks in the second, running back Trey Sermon out of The Ohio State University in the third round, and Ambry Thomas, the cornerback, in the third. 49ers were the worst team in 2018, made the Super Bowl in 2019, then they finished last in 2020 again. What happens in 2021? Is this their Super Bowl run?
Yeah, so I think the time that Kyle Shanahan's been there has been defined by how healthy they are or aren't. 2018, they thought, 2017, at the end of the season, they got a snapshot of Jimmy G. He had that 6-0 run for them as a starter, gave everybody the excitement. I think it was like the second or third game of 2018. He blows his ACL, gone. They just really can't make it happen, despite having a lot of talent in other places. They got a healthy season in 2019 for the most part from him, from George Kittle, from some of their pieces. And you saw them go all the way to the Super Bowl, one of the most dominant teams in the NFC. I think we all thought that they were at bare minimum going to be a playoff team coming off that last year because they still have all that talent. And they arguably had the worst injury run that they've had. Jimmy G only played a couple of games. Nick Mullins played a couple of games, was ineffective. CJ Beathard played a couple of games, was ineffective. George Kittle couldn't stay on the field. They went through running backs like they were going through toilet paper. You didn't get very much of Ayuk or Samuel. And then that doesn't even account for all the defensive injuries. So it's kind of amazing that they were one of the most interesting 6-10 teams in the league, but that's really been the difference. If they can stay healthy, they're definitely a playoff team. They are loaded in tons of positions. They have very creative play calling. I'll be curious to see if the defense takes anything of a step back with Salah moving on, but they still have a lot of talent on both sides of the ball. And I think they can definitely compete for a playoff. Can they stay healthy? That's going to be a big thing for the fantasy value for a lot of these guys as well.
Yeah, health is going to be the only thing, in my opinion, that holds these guys back. Because, we've seen Jimmy G. Say what you want about him. He's been productive when he's been on the field. I remember we talked about this a little bit last year because I actually thought, which is funny, they draft Trey Lance this year to replace him. I thought there was a chance they would end up moving on from him this year or next year because the cap on the way his contract goes, it gets extremely easy to move on from because – and then I looked at the stats, and I'm like, well, when he's on the field, he's been extremely productive. When you look at his overall numbers, very good completion percentage, touchdown to interception ratio is just ridiculous. He puts up yards. I think it's because he doesn't wow you, whatever it is. He's still a very good quarterback. I think he's going to do good things for this team, and I'm with you. It's just the injuries. They were the one thing people may not remember. They were in the playoff race down the end of the season. Like there was still, even though they were at the 6-win mark, they're sitting there like, well, they still have a shot to make it in the NFC. And then they had to go through all the stuff in California with the fires. They weren't even getting to play at home anymore. They were having to go, I think it was to the Rams Stadium or something like that to
Arizona.
play.
They had
Arizona,
to share a home stadium with Arizona.
It was going all over. So their whole season was just completely screwed. I mean, everything was screwed up last year with COVID, and then their injuries and everything else just made it 10 times worse. So I'm with you. I think there's almost the only thing that holds this team back again this year is injuries. They're one of the best teams. I think they've got a legitimate shot, not just to win the East. I think they're going to be a Super Bowl favorite, whether it's Jimmy G or Trey Lance starting. I don't think it matters. I believe in Kyle Shanahan. The biggest thing is going to be, for me, what you mentioned with Salah. I thought, I've talked about it before on here, when the Browns were looking to hire their coach, and it was coming down to Stefanski and Salah, I said I'd have loved either one of them because I think Salah is a phenomenal defensive coach, putting him with Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, all those guys. So him moving on, what does that mean for this defense? You listen to any 49ers defensive players, current or past, talk about him. They talk about how much they love playing for him and the passion that he brings, the love they have for him. So how will that affect that defense? I think with the talent they have, it probably won't change it much. But even if that defense takes a tad bit of a step back, I think that offense and what Kyle Shanahan does is good enough to win them at least most of those games. So I expect the 49ers to at least be in the playoffs. Too early, I think, to say if they're going to make the Super Bowl. I don't think I predicted them. I think I predicted them to make the playoffs when we did our first schedule game thing. That was just kind of like a first dry run at it. I don't think I think it was Packers Baltimore, I believe, is what I had as my Super Bowl. So I obviously didn't have them going.
Yeah. I can't wait to actually do one when we're a little bit later. But the only nice thing I'll say, the 49ers promoted D'Amico Ryans to be defensive coordinator. He's been there working with that team with Shanahan, with Salah for the last few years. So at least there's some continuity, and hopefully, he was a decent player. We've seen that pan out big. We've seen that flop, but I'll be pulling for him. That helps to have some continuity, some system in there. And I still believe in Shanahan and Lynch. I think they have a good front office. They have a good situation going.
Yeah, I'm rooting for him as well. I love Kyle Shanahan ever since his day with the Browns when he did the trick play with Baker Mayfield. I mean, I still think they never should have let him leave. The fact that they did, I think, is well. I take that back. I love Stefanski now. Had we not gotten Stefanski last year, I'd still be lamenting the fact that we let Kyle Shanahan leave. But that is neither here nor there. And if they would have drafted Justin Fields, I'd be cheering for him even harder. I'd be a 49ers fan. So fantasy finishes and fantasy projections, Jimmy G or Trey Lance, who plays more games for the 49ers in 2021 and where do they finish? Dennis says Shanahan wants to prove how smart he is. He will do anything he can to have Jimmy G start all season if he's healthy. Jimmy G, again, in only 6 games last year, finishes QB 39, 1,096 passing yards with 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and 25 rushing yards. Do you agree with that, Matt?
I think Jimmy G starts more games. I think we may see Trey Lance at the end of the season, depending on where the 49ers are in pursuing a playoff opportunity. If they're in the thick of going into the playoffs, I don't think we see him at all. If they're on the borderline or playing out, I think we'll see him some. I don't have Jimmy G that high for fantasy purposes. I think he's very efficient and he's a very good NFL quarterback. He doesn't put up the gaudy fantasy numbers. I have him as a QB3.
Yeah, I will have Jimmy G as a QB3 as well for some of what you said. And I do think that Trey Lance is eventually going to start regardless of where they're going, because I would not be surprised if Jimmy G unfortunately suffers another injury, or just based on whether it's a game where they should win and he doesn't get it done or something. I think they're going to go to Trey Lance. You've seen nothing but 49ers hyping him up with everything they've been doing, with all these videos, workout, practice stuff. I've said from the beginning, I know you've talked about it a little bit as well, he was the furthest away, in my opinion, from being ready to start coming out of college. Doesn't mean that he can't, and doesn't mean that he will, though. I think that he should have sat for the year, but I also don't know what's going on up here for him. I don't know how smart he is. I've never sat down with him. I'll be honest, even if we sat down, I was like, hey, man, draw an offensive play on the whiteboard for me. I don't even know if I would know what the hell he's talking about. We've heard that one of the reasons they wanted him so badly is because he was one of the smartest guys in the draft. If he's already picking up that offense, there's no reason to hold him back because he's got the physical traits. That was my biggest argument the whole time was, would he be ready mentally after not being able to play for an entire year? Would he be ready to go out there and take that jump from D2 all the way up to the NFL? If he's already out there learning the playbook, knowing what he's doing, I don't see why you don't throw him out there. I would not be surprised if we see a ton of him in the preseason. And usually you get like the second and then the third. I wouldn't be surprised if you see like almost an entire game of him out there in the preseason. It's only 3 this year, right? So like preseason game 2, you see almost 3 full quarters of Trey Lance. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, maybe game 1.
Yeah, I didn't know. I assume Jimmy G will be out there some because I think they're going to want to work him back as well, being injured. But I wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, you're going to see.
Well, they're talking about the third game of the preseason still being the same as what the third game of the preseason has always been. The regular season, where they ask starters to play into the second half.
Yeah,
it seems like this is where it's so new. Having only the 3 preseason games, it's probably going to take us a couple of years to get a feel for it. But I'm almost wondering if those guys that you used to see get some kind of a big opportunity in game 4 get pushed up into that first game because they don't usually like to roll the veterans and starters out for much of anything in that first game. So I'm wondering if that's going to be, game 1. Let's see what you can do. And then, gets a half in game 2 and gets a quarter, unless, like you said, they're pushing for him to start. But if they think Jimmy G is their starter, and it seems like that's been all the indication, unfortunately, that's where the new preseason structure, because in past, game 4 would have been all Trey Lance.
Yeah.
But now you don't have a game 4.
Yeah, and that's why I think you're going to see a lot of him. And if he goes out there and he's playing good, like I said, I would not be surprised if we see him on the field. We just don't see this red-shirting freshman anymore. I mean, the only one who did it was, and why I do think that this situation could happen, is I'm pretty sure we talked about it a little bit on draft night, was the Alex Smith, Patrick Mahomes situation. And why that is somewhat equatable here, while I don't know if Jimmy G is better than what Alex Smith at least was doing with the Chiefs at that time, Jimmy G is better than what most of the quarterbacks are sitting behind when they come in. Most of these are like, I'm going to be honest, Jimmy G's better than Andy Dalton, or they're at least comparable. I don't think Andy Dalton's much better than Jimmy G. I think Jimmy G's shown, at least at times, to be a little bit more consistent than Andy Dalton, specifically in even bigger games. So that's why I could see it happening, but we don't typically see these guys sit. They usually start playing at some point.
Especially when you give up 3 first-round picks and take somebody at pick number 3. It's a tough pill to swallow for fans that you get mortgaged the entire future and they might not even see what the guy can do in his first year.
Yeah. I mean, granted, I think those two, because you talked about it, Kyle Shanahan, Lynch, they're kind of like solidified there. I think they signed like 10-year deals when they first got there, which granted, those really don't matter. Franchises can let these guys go at any point. But I think the fact that they did that, Jed York was showing, hey, like, we believe in these guys. They've got a process. We're going to let it roll out. They're only 3 or 4 years in at this point, so they're not just going to let him go. I do think that if they wanted to let him sit for a year, they could. I just don't see it. I think Trey Lance is going to end up playing at least half the season, if not more. So I guess if I have to pick one, I'm going to go Jimmy G just because I believe he's going to be the day 1 starter, and I do think he'll play at least some of it. We'll see there. I have to pick. Actually, I guess have to technically pick an answer, don't I? With 17 games, it's going to be odd number. I don't think they can both play 8. Well, no, there's only 16 games, so I guess they could play 8 and 8.
There's 17 games. There's 18 weeks, 17 games.
Oh, fuck. So, yeah, there's no way it can be.
We've talked about this.
I know. I keep
both
not remembering it. I need to see it.
Play 8.5 games.
I need to see. This has got to happen for like a couple of years before I can really get my mind around. And of course, like in 2 years, we're going to go to like 18 game schedules. That's going to fuck me up even more. So I'm going to go with Lance. I'm just going to do it. I really think that he's going to end up playing more. Jimmy G gets through like 5 or 6 games, and then it's going to be rocket ship emoji Trey Lance, to the moon, as people say. And it's going to be the Trey Lance show there in San Francisco. All right, the running back situation, which is just as confusing as what's going on at quarterback, if not more so. Raheem Mostert is back, but Sermon was the top pick. Jeff Wilson is out until likely November, which I do think helps clear things up just a little bit. So who leads this backfield and where do they finish? Dennis says if he stays healthy, Mostert leads the team in carries. Mostert has the one thing Mostert has the one thing that Sermon lacks, explosiveness. That being said, Mostert has yet to prove he can stay healthy for a full season with a big workload. Mostert, RB48 last year, 104 carries, 521 yards, 2 touchdowns, 16 receptions, 156 yards, and 1 touchdown in 8 games. Where are you going with the running backs?
Yeah, so I think those are the top 2 guys, unless you believe all the people that think Elijah Mitchell is the one that's just going to rise up from his 6th-round draft capital and surprise us all, or Wayne Gallman crushes all our hopes and dreams. It's the 49ers. I expect all 4 of those guys plus Wilson when he comes back to put up numbers. I think Mostert finishes higher. I don't have him super high. I tend to be with Dennis. I don't think he plays the whole season. I think he starts as the starter. I think he is good when he's out there. I have him in the RB3 range right now, just because, if I knew I was getting a full season, I'd feel a lot better putting him up, mid to upper RB2. I think he's got that kind of talent. Right now I have him RB3, and I have Sermon right around RB4 territory, just inside the top 50.
Oh, froze for a second. There we go. Okay. It's very hard for me to make this pick because I Dennis mentioned there the health issue with Mostert, right? Well, so Trey Sermon has as well. Every year in college, he's suffered an injury, and that's because like last year, we saw he comes over to Ohio State coming off an injury, ends up playing behind Master Teague for a little bit, finally gets on the field, and then hurts his shoulder in the national championship game, is out for the rest of the year. That was in 6 games, I think, at that point, 7, 8 games. So neither one of these guys is like the picture of health. I don't know which way to go with it. If I had to pick one, I am going to lean Mostert because I agree he's more explosive. I think he's the better pass catcher. Trey Sermon is a very good all-around back, and I think he's going to be good in that system. But I think if I had to pick one or the other, I'm going to go Mostert. I don't think either one finish as RB2s, though. I think they're both going to deal with some injuries, and I think they will split the ball enough that they're both going to kind of eat into each other just enough. And I honestly think when Wilson comes back, he's going to vulture both of them at times in the red zone and receiving work, which is going to hurt them down the end of the season. So I'm all in on letting somebody else take Mostert or Sermon, whoever they believe in your drafts, and kind of letting them slide, and then grabbing Jeff Wilson late and stashing him on your bench for a while until the second half of the season comes up. So I wouldn't be surprised if he does what he did last year, where he was a stud throughout your fantasy playoffs. So I'm gonna go with you guys. I think Dennis said he had him outside the top 24.
Yeah.
I'm with you guys as well. I don't think either one of them makes it in there. They both kind of slide just outside of it, both high-end RB3s. Ayuk or Samuel, who is the best receiver in 2021, and who do you want more long-term? Dennis says it's kind of an OBJ Landry setup. One is the superior deep threat in Ayuk and will dominate that aspect of the game. The other, Samuel, is better at the short underneath game in PPR leagues. I can see them finishing very close together. Ayuk finishes wide receiver 35 with 60 receptions, 748 yards, and 5 touchdowns in 12 games. In 7 games, Deebo finishes wide receiver 96, 33 receptions, 391 yards, and 1 touchdown.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Dennis in that you split and you feel like they're going to be close. I have Ayuk finishing higher, but I have him in the wide receiver 3 category. Samuel, I think, is a wide receiver 3 for Teeter. I don't know I guess my concern about him is him staying healthy. We saw him get injured, or, struggle with injuries and getting on the field in his, I almost said freshman year. I've been on here too long with you because now I'm doing in his rookie year.
Not to, right?
Last year, only 7 games. He's looked good when he's on the field, but he's not always on the field. That coupled with, I don't think they're a tremendously high volume passing game, and their best receiver is not a wide receiver. So I like Ayuk better long term as well. I just think he does something different than Kittle. And that's why I have him higher. I know that's probably a little bit of personal preference. I've seen people preaching about Deebo Samuel being the guy you want to own. I don't have strong, passionate feelings, but for me, I have Ayuk slightly higher in 2021. I have him slightly higher in dynasty ranks.
Yeah, I'm all in on Ayuk. I know there's a lot of talk that, maybe with Kittle being back and healthy and Deebo being back and healthy, Ayuk won't break out. I just think he's the better player than Samuel. I like Deebo, but I think Ayuk is more explosive. And I don't necessarily agree with what Dennis said on him being the deep threat either. I think he can do everything Deebo does, but better. I think they can use him in the running game as well. They can use him in the short area. I think all around, Ayuk is the better receiver. The biggest thing that's going to, I think, hurt them might be Jimmy G, because I wouldn't be surprised if they do try to use Ayuk more down the field. And while he's not a horrible passer, I do think he has a pretty good completion percentage every year, and he's decent. I think that's where he struggles the most, is completing those deep balls. So does that affect Ayuk at all? I don't know, but I do think Ayuk's going to finish as the higher wide receiver. He's the guy that I'd want. I have to pay up for him. I think last I looked, his ADP, he's like in the top 12 of wide receivers because everyone believes in him. So, but he's the one I would go with. I didn't hear. Did you say where you have him? Like where you think he's going to finish, Ayuk?
For 2021, I had him in high-end wide receiver 3. Part of it for me is pass volume.
Right. I'm trying to think of where I would go with
There's
him.
also, I know you haven't, I don't know if you've finished it. Wide receiver is brutal. There's so many guys.
Oh,
I want to put up in the top, as I'm going through, and I'm like, oh, this is great. Oh, man. Oh, man. I mean, wide receiver feels so blessed.
Oh, I mean,
the opposite of running back. You get outside of 18 and you're like, this feels like 11 dart throws.
Yeah. When we did ours for the Campus to Canton website, I remember going, because we did that, like you're putting it in, starting out, like this is how you would draft him in a startup. Yeah, I was like, I want Ayuk in my top 12, and I'm like trying to figure out ways to move, but I don't want to move this guy down. Like, I'm pretty sure like at one point I had Galladay down at like 20, and I'm like, that doesn't feel right. He needs to move up. And I'm looking like, but I can't move him up that far. Yeah, wide receiver is loaded. So yeah, I'm with you. I haven't done mine yet, so I don't know where he's going to finish. That feels about right. I feel like I'm going to try to figure out a way to move him into a wide receiver too, like low end. But
I have him at 27.
Okay, so that's close.
I mean, that's what I said. It's like high end, and I mean, it gets tough early. I was even after we kind of debated about Lockett and Metcalf, I was thinking, oh man, that's why I haven't finished receiver, because it just feels so hard. I've rearranged even the top 5 a bunch of times. There are so many wonderful options. If people stay healthy, we could have a real boon at wide receiver.
That's why you wait on wide receiver, folks. Wait on wide receiver. Last but not least, George Kittle. Let's see here. My bad. I was looking at the wrong thing. Kittle is a beast when he's on the field. Where does he finish in 2021? Dennis said, I think he's still a top 3 tight end. He needs to score more touchdowns, or San Francisco needs to throw the ball more for him to challenge for tight end 1. He finished as tight end 19 last year, 48 receptions, 634 yards, 2 touchdowns in only 8 games. I know the one game, I'm pretty sure it was when he scored both touchdowns, because that was the game that gave me my first win in Scott Fishbowl 10. So I was very appreciative.
You and me both.
So I love George Kittle. I've said it before. I'll say it again here. My biggest fear is I feel like he plays the tight end position like a linebacker, and that scares me. I somewhat agree with Dennis, but I don't think San Francisco is going to throw the ball enough for him to ever contend for tight end 1, at least while Travis Kelce is around. When Travis Kelce retires, maybe. If Kittle's still kind of doing what he's doing now, then he's got a shot. But I'm with you. I don't think that I'm with Dennis. I think he's still top 3 for me, because when he's healthy, in my opinion, he's the best tight end in the game with what he does all around. I think Kelce's a better offensive weapon, but what Kittle can do blocking and in the offense, I think he's the best tight end on the field. But with Kelce around, Waller was really good last year. I don't think Pitts jumps him this year, but I think Pitts could be close.
Hawkinson could threaten that, depending on volume.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's some really good tight ends at the top, but I just think at worst you're not moving him out top 5. But if he stays healthy, I can't see any way he's not in the top 3. What do you think about Kittle?
Yeah, I mean, health's the biggest thing. The dude finished inside the top 20, only playing half the games.
Yeah.
And playing half the games with sometimes questionable passing.
Yeah.
So I have him right now at tight end too. I'm with Dennis. I don't think they have enough volume for him to surpass Kelsey, especially with Kelsey, in my opinion, probably being the best receiver in the Kansas City complement of weapons. But if he stays healthy, he's right there. The challenges are, do the Raiders give more volume to Waller that puts him over? Does Hawkinson, with the lack of receivers in Detroit, get enough volume to surpass him? Those are basically the only two that I would say have an outside chance. But I think when Kittle's healthy, he gets a lot of touchdowns too, which is another reason that I hold back a little bit on those receivers, because Kittle's a better red zone option. They have running options in the red zone. That's where I think he is the best receiving option on that team.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% there. So let's do it. We're going to do it. I got these bad boys just for this here too. I don't know if it's going to work with my headset, but I just got these when I was at Disney. It's the Loki Disney ears. All right. It's not going to work with the headset, and then I can't hear you, but I'm ready for this. So we've gotten through the 2 episodes. I have not had a chance to watch episode 3 yet. My got family in town, so my wife is with them. I will definitely have a chance to watch that by next week when we'll get a chance to talk about that then. The show kicked off on June 9th. What have your thoughts been so far on Loki?
Yeah, I think it's been good. It's about what we expected from Hiddleston, who is really good at that character, very charismatic. Even when Loki has had heel turns in those movies, it's been very good. I was kind of excited about where they picked up because we saw in Avengers Endgame how they kind of made a alteration to the events of the original Avengers film, and it's nice to see it picking up there and going back to something that we saw in that movie and you didn't know, and they never really resolved it in the movie, which it's nice to see they're kind of resolving it here and branching off. I thought he's had a good pairing with Owen Wilson. It's been fun. It's been strange. It's been different, but I'm enjoying it so far.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. For starters, I love Owen Wilson. I think he's a phenomenal actor outside of the wow thing, which everybody, I think, kind of gives him crap for, makes fun of him because that's what he's known for. But I think he's a really good actor. I think he's like nailed playing Mobius. That's been amazing. And I'm with you. I mean, it's been a fun ride for me so far. I've been like fully engaged both 2 episodes. First one, I was really kind of intrigued, like, where is this going to go? What's this going to be about? So I hadn't obviously had a chance to watch it, as we talked about. One of my best friends had already watched like the first episode, and he wanted to talk to me about it. I was like, well, I haven't watched it, but I have so many questions. And that's where does it pick up? Is Loki actually still, for spoiler alert, if you guys for some reason haven't seen Endgame or anything, he dies. Loki doesn't kill him. Thanos ends up killing him. I was like, is he still alive? Is this an alternate universe? Like, I was trying to figure out all this different stuff. I do like the way that they've answered these questions so far. They've taken it right from that part where he grabs a Tesseract when they go back in time to get it and disappears with it, where they brought in. I think it's very interesting the way they're setting everything up. Again, obviously, I'm into episode 2. I've not seen episode 3. But it's a different kind of show. And the third original Marvel show, third different kind of show. How does it compare to the other 2 for you?
So it's hard until you get to the end to completely drop them in there. But I will say so far, I'm enjoying this one more than I did Falcon and the Winter Soldier at the beginning. Because if you recall, I was pretty nonplussed by some of their story decisions and character arcs in episode 2 and 3. I thought they really rebounded, and I ended up really liking that experience. WandaVision, we didn't know what to expect. It was so cool and so different. I still probably liked that more to start, but Loki's been right in there. It's been fascinating. You got to the big reveal at the end of episode 2 to see and
female Loki. Yes.
Yeah, and I've enjoyed I enjoyed the episode that dropped yesterday, a little bit of more of their relationship developing. But Hiddleston's so good in it. Owen Wilson's good. It's something completely different. And I'm curious to see where it goes. I'm enjoying it so far, and my wife's enjoying it too. The Marvel ones, they've done a great job with coming up with interesting ideas that are expanding on the world and picking up some fringe pieces that were left off in some of the movies and building that out.
Yeah, so I love what they're doing, and I feel like not enough different entities do stuff like this. And now I know that, and again, maybe it's because they're partnered with Disney and all this stuff that's going. They're knocking this stuff out of the park. And I was going to bring it back as to Star Wars. Like, we know there's a lot of Star Wars stuff coming as well. Obviously, Mandalorian has been a massive hit with what they're doing. We got Obi-Wan coming soon as well. Like, I love that they're taking this, and it's not just like what the movies are. You're getting to expand and see completely different things with these universes. And one thing's with Loki, I think he's a character that is beloved by a lot of people. Some of that, we talked about Tom Hiddleston, just like the perfect casting choice for Loki. Like, he's nailed it. We never really got to see a lot of Loki, though, and he's a very intriguing character, in my opinion, from the parts where you're for sure 100% this dude is completely evil to the moments or toward the ends of the franchise where he kind of completely turns around and is helping Thor, helping the Asgardians, getting to see a whole different side of him, and I love it, and I love that they're doing this. I can't wait to see where the show ends up going because, like I said, it's been very intriguing. I want to see episode 3 because I've heard there's some really good things about it, but sticking with 1 and 2, 2, like you just mentioned, was the big reveal. Sorry, I forgot to say spoiler alert, so if you guys didn't see that, I apologize, but there is at least I assume, I don't know, I'm assuming it's an actual female Loki, and he's not shape-shifting or anything. Okay, so obviously I don't want to ask any questions about that because they might get answered in episode 3, and I want to find that out when I'm watching the show, but I found that to be very intriguing. I will say the one thing that I really liked so far, and it was in episode 1 toward the end, was how well Loki, or I should say Tom Hiddleston, does of like playing in a way, in my opinion, like a tragic character in Loki, especially when he sits there and like watches his mother pass and he has no idea. Like, he's watching his life go, seeing that he does end up getting killed by Thanos, and how that kind of turns him, you think, into wanting to help them, and then he tries to backstab him when he first goes to the tent and trying to get away from into the medieval period or with the Renaissance fair where the group is attacked. And then later on when they get to this big supermarket. But it's been fun to see. I do like the comedy that they put in this as well a little bit. Again, Tom Hiddleston, I think, does a great job of bringing that to the role. Owen Wilson does a good job of it as well. So what have you thought about the story, though? Again, you're a little bit further in than I am, but just like the first 2 episodes, what that kind of did for you leading into episode 3.
Well, I think to speak to your point, you never really know what way he's going to go because we've seen him play the hero and we've seen him play the heel. You don't know what his motivations are, what direction things are going to go. Like you, it seemed like when he was watching some of that footage or seeing some of that, even when he was watching and reading about the destruction of his planet, it looked like he was really emotionally moved. But then when he comes out of it, it's more like, this is what I would do. This is a perfect, It's a really nuanced character, and I think that's what helps keep it on the edge because we've seen him vacillate back and forth even throughout the movies that he's appeared in. The other part that I'll be curious to see how it plays out is so far what we've seen, the pattern for these shows has been that they get some tangential character, other pieces out of the world that they come in contact with, and it seems to set up a point of forward trajectory. WandaVision ended in a place where you saw her propelling into Multiverse of Madness, the second Doctor Strange movie. Falcon and the Winter Soldier ended in a place where you could see them continuing it as a regular series, and they've already discussed a 4th Captain America movie. You kind of have that set up. I'll be curious what the kind of plan is for Loki. Is it setting up maybe continuation of a series in this time variant authority? Are we going to get some kind of an intersection back into the larger Marvel world? There was a nice intersection point where they pulled him out of that answered a kind of hanging participle from Endgame. That must have been very intentional. Is there going to be another place where it slots or where it points forward? How is it connected? And that's one of the interesting pieces for having a larger fabric of an interconnected world. You get with the timelines and things like that. Maybe this is also going to play into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness in some way.
Yeah, I'd be very curious to see if that does happen because, obviously a lot of people, especially the people who love the Loki character, are hoping with him wanting to. It seems like at least one motivation he has is to at least meeting the timekeepers who, it's believed at least as of right now, what is the name of their group? I'm not, the name is not sticking in my head at the moment.
Time Variance Authority.
Yeah, there we go. So TVA. I was thinking of another 3-letter thing that starts with TA that you'll understand with something going on with us in the background. So I was not thinking of that. So the TVA, they're a very interesting thing with everything. They're talking about like controlling the timelines and everything because, it's was like the age-old question, right? Like, do we control our own destinies or are our paths already set for us? That's kind of a thing that they're addressing in this, which I also find very interesting, this like larger question. And you have Loki, who, at least for the most part in these first 2 episodes that I've seen, has talked very much about like wanting to meet the timekeepers because what they say is he keeps calling them these lizard people, and as Owen Wilson kind of addresses, or Mobius, addresses in the second episode, they're continually like figuring out where this timeline's going. They decide what's going to happen. And I feel Loki is saying that, no, that's not, we decide what we want to happen kind of thing. So I'm very interested to see how that all plays out in this as well. I hope we get a bigger answer to that and what's going on with that. But I agree with you. Where does this lead? Because I hope it doesn't just lead to, well, now Loki, because I could see a very realistic way of this leading toward, well, then he just goes back or he disappears because he's not there anymore, right? Like this is a different thing. They've closed that timeline and he's just gone. Maybe they figure out a way where he stays with the TVA to help, or is it something where he goes back in? We see somewhere in between, like Thor 3 and 4, and becomes the more kind of helping Thor out, and end up kind of becoming a good guy.
I think if I'm understanding what they're saying, that version of Loki got pulled out and they corrected the timeline.
Yeah.
So that Loki
can't go back.
Continue to, so like he's a variant now.
Yeah.
Which once you see the next one, I think we'll be able to have a better conversation.
Gotcha.
About.
Okay. Yeah, so that's the worst part about it, not seeing everything. I don't know what comes next. So yeah, but I'm over on Treat with. I'm with you. I think for me, the Scarlet Witch one was a little bit more intriguing because I like the suspense about it. We didn't have any idea of what anything meant, right? Because we saw, like, I only watched I've only seen the first trailer of each of them. So we already knew Loki was coming back. And outside of Loki, obviously, as I mentioned earlier, being killed by Thanos, the big question we had is, well, where is this in the timeline then? Like, how is Loki still alive? Is this early? Now we know, at least that first part of it. Could that change? We don't know yet, but we know that it came after the events in Endgame where they go back in time. Scarlet Witch, we see even in the first trailer, Vision's there, also, and you don't understand what's going on because last we saw Vision as well, he was killed. We don't really know what happened with Scarlet Witch. So the suspense and the way that they built that, like I said, I loved it. I thought it was a great show. And a lot of people didn't like the switching around of different comedies. I thought Scarlet Witch was a hit from episode 1. And so far, I'm all on board Loki. Now, I did like Falcon and the Winter Soldier a lot as well. But I think Loki would probably be 2 for me right now as well. And that's more of just, I'm more invested for whatever reason in Tom Hiddleston and Loki. I like the character. I'd like to see him get more screen time. So I'm definitely intrigued to see where the storyline goes as well, because there's so many different ways I feel like it could go. And this is one of the longer ones as well, right? There's like 8 episodes or 9.
Yeah, I was gonna look. I think that there's 8. Let's see if it says.
Because the other thing I love about it is that they're almost an hour long as well, which is nice compared to Scarlet Witch was like 20.
The third one did get shorter. It's 40 minutes.
Oh, damn it.
Yeah, it says 6 episodes.
Oh, okay. So, damn, we're already halfway.
Oh, so we're already halfway through. Yeah.
I guess that makes sense because I think that they ends right around about the time that Black Widow comes out in theaters. So
yeah, it looks like July 14th is the finale.
God, that sucks. We're almost there. All right. But so yeah, I'm all in. I'm really enjoying it. I can't wait now until hopefully my wife comes home early tonight and I'm able to watch episode 3 today because I really want to. I've heard good things about it. So I'm excited, but I'm all in. It's been really fun. I can't wait to see what they do. Do they have another show coming anytime soon?
Yeah, there was a couple of other Marvel shows. That might be the other reason it's ending. I think Eternals is a movie. Let me
Okay.
pull up Marvel original series.
Is it Moon Knight? Is Moon Knight a show, or is that going to be?
Yeah, but that's going to be in the fall. I think there's one. The What If series was supposed to be the next that was going to launch this summer, if I recall. WandaVision, Loki, yeah. What If launches in August, and then Miss Marvel, it says late 2021. Hawkeye is somewhere in 2021. Moon Knight, they have in 2022 now.
Gotcha.
She-Hulk 2022, Secret Invasion 2022, Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special 2022. So the ones they have remaining for that are supposed to be this year that are in post-production, Miss Marvel and Hawkeye. And then What If? What If is actually supposed to be longer. It says 10 episodes. I believe that's the anthology series where they imagine different things, and that's going to be the that was the last thing that Chadwick Boseman filmed.
Gotcha. Okay. Awesome. All right. Well, 3 more episodes left then of Loki. We'll continue to break them down at sort of as they happen. I'll be unfortunately an episode behind every single week, but we'll get through it. I'll I might risk a little bit of getting yelled at, maybe a night sleeping on the couch with the final episode and watch it on Wednesday, and that way we can talk about it on Thursday. But that will do it for us today. We will be back on Monday. Dennis will be back with us, obviously, as well, as it is a Monday episode, and we will be talking about the AFC West. We will be talking about the Chiefs and who's the other team? Raiders. The Chiefs and the Raiders. So until then, everybody have yourself a good weekend, and we will talk to you guys again